Hi, so welcome to this catch-up. I'm your host, Craig Waters, and we're in Melbourne. It's a bit wet at the moment, it's raining a little bit, and I've got a very special guest on the vCatchup today, and special guest, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Josh Odgers. I'm a virtualization architect for IBM. It's great to be here, Craig.
You're underselling yourself there, I think, mate. You know what other? You've got a few other accolades, haven't you, Josh? You know, what are you? Share a few of those things.
Couple of quiet ones. Yeah. VCP 3, 4, and 5, and VCDX version 4 and 5.
Bang, VCDX. That's good, mate. It's good. And congratulations on your vExpert as well.
Yeah,
so
you too,
congratulations,
mate. Well
yeah. But it's a bit self-patting on the backs there, yeah, for our vExpert. So that was announced recently, or continuity now. We've got continuity errors now, so I better get this out pretty quick. But yeah, so look, I asked Josh to come on the vCatchup today, and I want to, try and bring it back into Melbourne. I've been doing some international interviews before, but I want to kind of bring it back home and talk to some local guys and I've got the usual kind of questions. I've got about 5 or 6 questions that we're going to go through. So we'll kick off with the first question, I guess. Actually, before we start, maybe you could talk about your blog a bit and stuff, because that's some quite interesting stuff. So,
sure. So my blog is called Cloudxc, and it's just my name, joshodgers.com. And the main focus of the blog is on architectural decisions. So deciding when to use a setting, when not to, and how to configure it.
Yeah.
So there's about probably 20 or 30 examples at the moment. So
yeah, and I've found them really helpful. In a previous life, I was an architect, and so a lot of the times we did some work around UCS and stuff like that. And I think it's a fabulous piece of resource. It's something quite different as well. It's not your usual. Here's a technical problem and this is what I did to solve it sort of thing. It's much more about the concepts of requirements and the key components of architecting, I think. So some really good stuff there. So I'll jump into the questions now anyway. I'm procrastinated long enough. So what the first one I wanted to ask you about really was about your interpretation of the tech community in Australia, and how we can what do you think makes us stand out compared to other countries, particularly around virtualization and the compute, storage and network piece and the data center side? So.
Yeah, I think Australia has always been a leader in virtualization. We're highly virtualized, and our clients tend to adopt technology quite quickly, as well as New Zealand. So our environments are typically smaller than US based, so that really gives us flexibility. So I think that's probably one reason why we're so highly virtualized, as well as the expertise in the region. So we have around 10 VCDXs in Australia and New Zealand, which is very high per capita. So I think that really drives.
Yeah. What do you call a bunch of VCDXs? And I was calling this at the user conference. I was saying a mob of kangaroos or something. What would you say? Or is it a pod of VCDXs? Or I don't know.
I think there's a consensus around the community about this. I just can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I think we came to something. But anyway, just on the side a bit. Yeah. So what I mean, you've been involved in the community now for a few years. I mean, can you tell us a bit more about your dealings with the community and how you find as a Vmworld leader myself, obviously you've been involved in doing a lot of prezos for us, and we appreciate your community involvement and what you give. But I don't know what kind of experiences you had from that. What's that kind of led to, sort of thing?
So I guess. What got me involved in the community was really after finishing VCDX, I wanted to give back, because there's so many great VCDXs out there that blog and tweet and add a lot of value, and I wasn't doing that. So I felt that as a VCDX I had somewhat of a responsibility to give back to the community. So about roughly 12 months ago I kicked off my blog, as well as started tweeting. In the last 12 months, obviously, one of my goals was to give back, and I think I've done a reasonable job, being that I achieved the expert. So that was fantastic. That was very good, I think.
Do you find they're the main tools of the trade then around social media? The whole, one of the slides I do at the user group, is about the social media toolkit and things like tweeting and blogging and the value of Twitter and stuff. I mean, for you, what can you? I know I'm kind of going off a bit here, but
Sure.
Can you tell us a bit about your experiences of those mediums and what kind of feedback you've had?
Sure. I think I was well behind the times last year because I wasn't blogging, I wasn't tweeting, And what I've found in the last year is that my network of people who I know and deal with on a daily basis has grown tremendously, and my knowledge has grown because blog updates and so forth come via Twitter. I can reach to other people very quickly and easily, and people are very responsive on Twitter. So if I need to reach out, ask someone a question, or if someone needs help, it's a very good way to do that, and also publicise my blog, as well as Vmug and things like that.
Yeah, I think for Twitter, for me, really, it really does. It's that global community thing, and it really does bring home the opportunity for you to talk and reach out to people who you'd never have contact with. I know there's a podcast around at the moment called the Geek Whisperers that John Troyer and some of the other guys in the community do. Amy Lewis and I'm terrible with names. Yeah, sorry, but anyway, like that. One of the pieces that they talked about, was the idea that when you go to conferences now, you're not alone anymore. You're not going to these places and not knowing anybody and how do I hang out with the cool kids and stuff like that. Everybody knows each other. Like, they may not have had face-to-face time, but you go there saying, I'm going to go and find so-and-so because I've spoke to them on Twitter loads of times and I want to actually meet them face-to-face. So, it kind of brings home that you're this global reach of the community, and the fact that you can go, halfway around the world on a plane and you can go to a conference and you know people and they welcome you with open arms kind of thing. So
yeah, I certainly found that at Vmworld that I knew so many more people. It was very hard to walk around because you got interrupted constantly, but it was very good to...
You don't get much done, do you?
To meet the people and, to be able to comment on someone's session on Twitter, they get that feedback straight away. I think that was really valuable for some of the presenters.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's good. So look, the next question I'll talk about really was around, and we've kind of covered it a little bit, it's just about how you support your local VMUG. And I use a really strong word. I use the word commitment, and I really say, what kind of commitments have you got in store for 2013? Now, this is kind of a double-edged question because you've already produced a lot of commitment. Sure. I can actually honestly talk about the sort of stuff that you've done already. You've done customer presentations at the last quarterly meeting. Yep. You did a meeting on our all-day user conference. Yeah, yep. I just got to press that. There we go. So you've really shown your commitment. But what kind of stuff? What do we have in store for you? Not just the VMUG as well. Like, I guess the community as well. What kind of stuff do we have? In store for you this year? You got any projects or plans in place around that? Or?
One of my goals for this year was to present at Vmworld. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that for a number of reasons, but my goal is really to focus on VMUGs. So at the next VMUG, I think you and I have already talked about continuing on the topic last time around stretch clusters and SRM. Yeah. So that would be one thing I'm focusing on, as well as continuing the blog and trying to do more frequent updates. So cool. I think really continue what I've been doing is really my goal, and probably add a little bit more value. So do a bit more blogging, a bit more tweeting. And
because we've got to understand, we've got to realise that this is, you've got a day job, and you've got family commitments and stuff as well, and yet you do all this out of your own spare time. So it's your effort putting it, and we all do this, really, with the community. We're not really paid to do these things, and I think that that's a real important piece that I always talk about when I do the presentation at the beginning of the VMUG. When I do the introductions, I say, I've got a great steering committee behind the VMUG, and these guys do it out of their own time. They're passionate about it. They're interested in it, and so having people like yourself contribute, I think it's a fantastic thing, and it needs to be highlighted that people like Josh do this because they've got a passion for it and they love it, and that's, we're all in there together. So I think it's a really important piece. Thanks for that. I appreciate you.
I think it's mutually beneficial as well. So it's good experience for me, presenting and things like that at events, and it also helps the community. And I think it's a two-way street. When I present, I tend to get asked questions, and I learn things as well. So no one knows everything. So I think it's a good way to increase your knowledge and become better in the field. So the community's great. Man. Yeah, I really enjoy it.
That's great, man. That's really good. Thanks for that. Yeah. So look, back onto the questions, and I've been asking the similar couple of questions to all of the people I've come on the vCatchup, and so really I'm this next question is really about kind of a predictions piece and stuff like that. So really, what do you think 2013 has in store from a tech perspective? What would you like to see? And for yourself, like any kind of predictions? I guess when I ask, vendors this, it's more about roadmap and stuff like that a little bit, but more from yourself, being a solutions architect, being involved in the industry, what do you reckon is going to happen this year? What do you reckon is going to be some interesting stuff happening?
Sure. I think that obviously virtualization is, we've done compute already. Compute is highly virtualized, so storage is becoming more virtualized. So I think that will continue to grow. I think at the moment, although there is storage virtualization, I wouldn't say it's mainstream yet, although the technology is very good. So I expect to see a lot of storage virtualization happening. And the same with network virtualization, things like Nicira. So I expect those will really ramp up. Because at the moment, while storage virtualization is happening, it's not widespread, and network virtualization very rare. So I think those will really ramp right up.
I think there's a lot. There's plays going on there, but I think a lot of those key players are actually kind of sitting on the fence a little bit and seeing how things pan out, sort of thing. Like I think there's a concept now. Like it's great. The taxonomy's been created. We've got like a standard. It's like like when cloud first came out. We've got like a standard reference architecture. We can talk about what it is, and we've got a frame of reference we can talk to it about. Now it's more talking, it's more about like how that pans out and how people actually deliver on those ideas. So
absolutely delivering on that roadmap that people have got. So I think that's what's really going to happen this year and into next year.
And any other pieces that anything else you've seen? Any any technologies you've seen recently that you?
Sure. I think there's a lot of startups in the storage space. And the hyperconverged infrastructure, which you know a little bit about. With Nutanix. So
trying to stay neutral with that. So the vCatchup and Nutanix have been mentioned already, but anyway, we'll move along.
But and also companies like Pernix Data coming out with the flash and SSD moving back into DAS storage with Fusion IO and things like that. So there's a few.
And like in your like role, like the customers that you're talking to, the solutions that you're involved in architecting. I mean, are there any trends that you're seeing in that respect, like stuff that you're working on at the moment that I don't know whether it's more like particular gotchas or something, but from an architect's perspective, what kind of things are you seeing? What kind of changes are you seeing in organisations? What kind of things are companies asking for? That kind of.
I think people are starting to realise that from the storage space that has always been a big bottleneck in virtualization, and that's why we have all these startups in the industry at the moment. And I think that's one of the main challenges. So customers are realising that agent level backups are no good anymore. They're not virtualization friendly. So I think the trend is moving towards everything being virtualization friendly and the integration between the layers, which has been lacking for years. And even though we have integration with most vendors have good integration, it's not as heavily utilised, I find, as what it should be, because it's great technology. So I try and push customers down that route to understand the value of the tie-in between products.
Because it's quite an interesting. Do you find then that there's no issue with the platform now? Because even now I still see. You look at technologies like vCloud Director, and it's all about abstraction now. People have got over the idea of virtualizing their DMZ, virtualizing key components. But you still see, like in some IT shops, where they're using traditional techniques for isolation and separation. Are you finding that still is the case? Particularly maybe in larger organisations, are they embracing virtualization, to the edge now, or is there still?
A lot of organisations I still find have silos, and that's one thing I try and educate my customers about is the fact that we can logically isolate things. We don't need that physical separation for DMZs. We've got VLANs and we've got storage virtualization and multi-tenancy and things like that. So that's certainly a focus of mine to try and increase the value out of the hardware people buy. It's something that is an uphill battle in most organisations because it's a fundamental shift from how things have been done for a long time. But we're getting some wins on the board, and customers are really seeing the benefit because they need less hosts. They don't need as many for HA failover, for example. So the overheads are being reduced by by going that way.
Yes, it's always struck me, that whole idea of convergence of like, on a physical level, it's fantastic because it's like, from a cost perspective, I'm not having to buy as many hardware components. So there's an immediate benefit to it. But then when you look at it logically, actually that convergence actually creates a level of complexity that's not there. So do you find then in that situation that organisations are like, I'm sorry I'm drilling on this organisation piece, but obviously your feet are on the ground and you're talking to customers on a daily basis, but do you find then that they're seeing benefit, like they're seeing pain points from that, the fact that it becomes a logical configuration concern, and so having the skills internally and having the depth of knowledge to be able to like manage and maintain that, that configuration on a complex level like that?
I think there's certainly some complexity that gets added, but I think it's like virtualization. There's complexity, but the benefits outweigh the downsides.
That's
so
well put. Thank you.
I think that's probably how I would sum it up. VMware is a complicated product, but if you deploy it well, it does solve a whole range of problems. So I think that's how I would describe it.
Yeah, you look at technology like vCloud Director, I mean, there's a lot to it, but the benefits that it can provide to an organisation are pretty, and I guess, in that kind of technology piece, it's still very much, the understanding's getting there about logical separation and stuff, but it's pieces of that overall puzzle that need to be solved. It's a complex machine. It's not just putting in a vSphere server in there. There's obviously a lot more to it. And I guess that's when things like design and architecture really come into play, because there's considerations across the board. That you would maybe even not think is something that's actually dependent upon it.
Yeah, that's right. I think a lot of people, when they do a design, they don't think of the implication of what they do, and they don't consider all the dependencies of the solution working. So that's generally, when I review designs, they're generally the points that I find are lacking, as well as articulating the requirements. That is the biggest problem. So I think if a company understands what they are trying to achieve, then it makes it easier to define your requirements and design to that. I think that people deploy solutions like vSphere and they know it's got all these great features, but they don't know what features they're going to leverage. So when they do their design, it's very generic, and then they don't get as much value. So to me, the focus is 90% design and 10% implementation.
Yeah, I was going to, that's a really good point.
Implementation of these technologies is not actually that complicated, and it doesn't take that long if you design it correctly the first time. It's when you don't design it that you get complexities, you get failures, things don't work as you expect. And
some of those mechanisms that we've got now, some of the goodness like HA and DRS and stuff like that, it's no longer an operational piece now. I mean, I'm not devaluing operational. Obviously, there's an operational maintenance that needs to be done, but it's considerably compressed now compared to what it used to be like. It's more about that 90% execute, planning and designing and executing. That 10% ongoing BAU is actually quite a small piece.
It should be in a properly designed environment.
Very well put.
Very
well put. No, that's good. Thanks for that. I appreciate you delving into that piece. So the next questions, we talked a bit about the software-defined X, and I wanted to go into the software-defined networking. I've been talking before to some of the previous people on the show about VMware building this. They've got this dream team that they've built together. They've got people like Brad Headland and Scott Lowe, and who's the Melbourne guy that's in there as well now. From Telstra, I can't remember his name now.
You've stumped down that one.
What's he called? He's going to kill me now. I've mentioned him and I can't get his name. I'm terrible with names, But it might come to me in a minute. But so we've even got local Melbourne guys. I'm going to have to get him on to talk about it, But I'm sure some of the guys will pick me up on that. But look, they've assembled this dream team, and they've got a really good cast in there. They've got some really good people who are well known in the industry, really good at executing it. And I guess it's kind of like it's the heyday of compute virtualization again in that space. It's all about education and understanding the concepts. And so what kind of what do you think? VMware's back to horse here. They've put like 1.2 billion into Nicira. They've got. I know that they're changing how they engage. They've got the separate NSX solution now.
Yes.
What do you think? What's your opinion on that plan? And where do you think that's going to go? And I guess ultimately, how do you think it will change the landscape and what we do at this current time?
I think it'll change the landscape very similar to what vSphere did to compute. vSphere solved so many problems for us by virtualizing and abstracting that layer. And I expect Nicira will do the same for us. Commoditizing the hardware, allowing us to be vendor independent as well to a point, and really put that layer on top of any switch. I think it'll help us be more dynamic, so we'll be able to change, upgrade and get better features quicker, because it won't be dependent on hardware cycles anymore. So we'll actually be able to go in, make a change, get a new feature, all in software. So we can do that independent of hardware, and that will reduce cost.
Big piece, isn't it?
And it'll help us be more dynamic, just like vSphere's done at Compute.
And let's be honest right now, I was looking at it the other day, I think some telco had an outage or something, and it was like their core switch crashed. It's always the network, isn't it? Right now, because we haven't decoupled that software from the hardware, it's always the network that goes on, it's always the network piece. Sorry network guys, but it's always the network piece that has, and that has such a big impact. If you're an organisation running your telecommunications for a country, not just a company, but for a whole country, and you have a core switch failure, man, it's a bad day to come to work, So I guess, if you can provide that HA capability and the DRS capability, like what we're doing in the Compute, that's going to change, how these systems function and their availability, and
It should reduce the cost of hardware, because hardware won't need to be as resilient. You won't need to buy two of everything. You'll be able to have compute nodes running your network, and the compute nodes are commodity, so it should reduce cost. Obviously, you'll be investing more in the software layer, but should get a better return on investment out of that.
Yeah, cool. So interesting times, I think. I think there's a lot. I feel anyway. It's a great time to be in the industry. There's a lot of really interesting things going on. So
keeps us on our toes.
It's the ever. That's my logo for the vCatchup. It's a guy, and he's on a circle. He's like a hamster on the treadmill kind of thing. And the treadmill's actually all books. It's all like and he's there reading a book, and it's like that ever cycle of knowledge of learning. We've got a lot to read. I'm sure keeping up with VCDX is a bit of work.
For a month, because you'll be out of date. So
things will change.
That's right.
So I like to ask all my guests on the show. Tell us about your home lab and. You obviously get your hands on the tools, but do you get your hands on the tools, and what kind of stuff do you do in your lab? So, give us a rundown on some of the tech, Sure.
Okay, so at home I've got two 3850s. They're an IBM server. They're 4-way. So they're IBM 3850 M2s, so they're an older generation. But they've got 4 sockets, 4 cores per socket. So I've got 32 sockets all up.
That's pretty good.
Which is very handy. And I have a HP Data Vault, just as a little NFS server, and then a HP Micro server doing iSCSI and NFS as well. And I do play around a lot with it, so it's in a varying state of functionality.
Yeah, what kind of stuff do you kind of do then with that sort of thing?
So I do things, for example, customers recently were looking at moving to NFS snapshot offload for their view deployment. So I basically set that up at home, and I showed them how quick it is even in the lab. So
how are you getting an NFS snapshot capability on an IBM server? How are you doing that? Software defined? Anyway, so
maybe it is. Sorry, using a virtual storage appliance.
Right, okay.
From NetApp. So there's a little name drop as well.
VSA, good stuff. That's good. So we're seeing the benefits of software defined already. So
we are.
That's good. So that's typically the case. Then you'll use it to recreate, scenarios so that you can then demonstrate it to your customers.
Yeah,
and stuff
absolutely.
Like that,
It's good also for creating a design. So you can go through and deploy it. You can test how functionality works. You can choose what settings are appropriate. So you can actually go through, make sure your detailed design has all the information required for the SME to go and deploy. Because typically I'll do peer reviews. Typically I won't do the installations myself, but at least if my design is thorough enough, it's got all the settings clearly listed, and a reason why I've chosen them. I find that that's really handy to have a lab that you can do that with.
Do you use orchestration much then? Do you like, I know, name dropping again, I'm terrible, but Alistair Cook's done the auto lab, Alistair Cook and Nick Marshall, and I've used that a few times for doing training, building up a test environment for training and stuff. But do you use, I'm not specifically mean auto lab specifically, but do you use any tools for orchestration? Do you find that, or are you just getting in there and
in my lab,
in?
I generally don't. I do things manually to make sure that every step is covered. But yeah, obviously in my lab as well, I do test automating things, but most of the time it's about getting the detailed design right, making sure the features work as expected, and deliver the value that.
Do you find that takes a lot of time up then actually, like, I mean, what kind of state is it in your lab? Do you find that it's kind of like, I'll get to that bit and use that bit because it's functioning at this point in time, as opposed to like overall, like, because my lab's pretty much a mess most times, it's something that's difficult to like maintain and keep on a regular basis. That's why I like the idea of these automation tools where you can just orchestrate a new environment ready, and then you've got something fresh to work with. Like,
typically my lab is not functional, like a mechanic's car is always not running. So
good analogy, I like that.
But that's basically because I'm always testing new things. So
you're always breaking it down.
Yeah, I'll deploy a Vue solution, for example, and then I'll do a vCloud deployment, and then I might test SRM and things like that. So. Yeah,
but you're more building on the platform as opposed to, like, because I mean that's what's great now is everything's a V app, so you can like just, I'll get my view and I'll build it up and then I'm away kind of thing, and it's like 20 clicks and I'm finished kind of thing. Whereas with vSphere and like with a vCenter and stuff, vCenter the appliances there as well, but with vSphere you're kind of having to do a ground up build, which can take time. I mean, it's obviously the installation process is better, but typically, particularly with like 5.1 and stuff, with single sign-on and things like that, it's become quite a complex piece to actually go and build that end to end. So
it has, and I think that's why it's important to have a lab as well, that you understand the different configurations. So single sign-on is a great example. I can't just leave my lab static. I have to change it. I have to test multi-site configurations, for example. So that's quite important. So that's why it's always in a state of disrepair.
Cool. Yeah. And you have your own lab? Do you do anything else? Do you have a shared colo, or do you?
So the lab's sitting in my study, which is actually on one part of my lounge room, so it's quite noisy when it's on.
Right.
Two 3850s going and some other things.
So you just power it on when you use it, kind of thing, and then power it off. Cool. Power bills, eh? Power's not cheap in Australia. I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world.
No, it's not. But, so if anyone wants to give me some data center space, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, there we go. You heard it here. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so looking, we'll get on to the last topic. Like really, the last question I really kind of leave open a little bit, and we discussed before, about. I was really keen to hear about your, not necessarily your VCDX journey, but where you are now compared to where you were about a year ago. Was it about a year ago now when you actually got your qualification and you were given your number and reflecting back now on what it was like then compared to today, and how it's been for you, that journey in the last 12 months, and what any reflections you could share with us about it.
Okay. Well, basically, I think after achieving VCDX, I somewhat put some pressure on myself because I was recognised as an expert. So I think additional thought goes into decisions. I really critique myself more than I used to make sure the decision is correct. I also reach out to other VCDXs. I have a number of friends who are VCDXs, which is very handy. So I tend to take a bit more time on design. So when you go through something like VCDX, you really understand how much you don't know. So having done VCDX, I realise there's still so much more to learn. So I'm still trying to continually increase my knowledge. So I think I've given myself a bit of a challenge there, but I think it's become more enjoyable doing architecture as a result of going through that process.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it is. It's quite a detailed thing to go through. I mean, especially the actual assessment side where you've got VCDXs going actually assessing you. Like that. Sure. That's kind of the. To me, that would be, the ultimate thing is that it's the people who's, it's their bread and butter is this product. They know it better than anybody kind of thing, and then to interview you on that.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I think it was really good to get the perspective of three experts on the panel. So I do that to myself now. When I actually go through and make a decision, I try and think, okay, what would a VCDX panel say about this? And in doing that, it makes my designs better. It makes the customer solution better. It makes it easier to manage and things like that. So
it's an interesting, where do you think you'll go now? And I mean, you've achieved this status. I mean, what is there anything more that you do, regarding I'm trying to make a question out of it. I'm doing my
Sure.
best. Yeah, sorry, I'm juggling around a bit. But like,
worries.
you know, as far as like you've attained this status for VCDX, I mean, do you feel then that like you want to broaden that skill set and look at maybe other hypervisors or other technologies, or do you feel then that now you're here that there's more work to be done around? Because, you know, VMware's got there's a lot of products. You know, it's its own. You know, it's its own factory on its own. You know, there's a lot of things in there. I mean, you know, and I guess with the changes to the certification, you know, they've pushed that out now, and you've got desktop streams, you've got cloud streams and stuff like that. I mean, you know, is that where you'll focus, or are you going to look at, you know, I don't know, OpenStack or Hyper-V or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's important to be well-rounded. So as a VCDX, you can't just be VMware. You've got to know network, you've got to know storage.
Yeah, definitely.
You've got to know application. So I think
that's an architect thing generally, isn't it? Really, is you need to have a strong base. Sort of thing.
if you don't understand what you're virtualizing, or you don't understand the dependencies of the virtual environment, such as network and storage, then you're not going to get to that level. So maintaining good knowledge of various vendors' offerings, you know, your NetApps, your EMCs, and so forth, and then looking at solutions. Pernix Data and Nutanix are great examples of products that can help virtualization. They do things quite well. So understanding those solutions so that I can pass that value on to the customer. So really combining solutions together to form better overall solutions, or combining products to create overall solutions.
So it's really that striving for the being the consummate architect and being able to provide, you know, being able to hit the ground on different levels and different technology pieces, kind of thing. So that roundedness, you know, like, oh yeah, I can delve into storage. Oh yeah, I can delve into networking. That kind of,
and keeping an open mind as well. So technology changes so fast that the best solution right now may be completely wrong tomorrow. So, or it might not even be fit for purpose in a world where we virtualize networking, for example. So it's important to keep up to date on those things and not just push out the same solutions. So the concept of a cookie cutter design, I think the days are over for that. So people need to be reassessing their recommendations almost on a project by project basis. Otherwise you get left behind, or you'll make a decision that doesn't suit what's happening into the future. So
it's all about options, isn't it, at the end of the day? And last thing, any tips for people out here, like just around how to keep currency in IT, and how, you know, what kind of stuff do you do to make sure that you're at least on top of what's going on at the moment?
Sure. I think Twitter is probably the best tool going around in the industry, because people write a blog about something, or a product is launched, or a new startup gets formed. That's a great way to learn about these things. So I recommend everyone get on Twitter and participate.
I've been saying this for a while, Okay.
So listen to Craig; he's a smart man. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. So get on Twitter. That's the best tool for sure. Then follow blogs, which is as a result of Twitter, of course, because that will be the most up-to-date information you will get. Obviously, there's great books out there, and they're excellent. To me, they're a secondary resource, and the blogs and Twitter is the primary, because it enables you to network. You and I is a great example. If I want to learn about Nutanix, I can come to you because I know you from Twitter. That's basically how you
get
and
that
I
personalised response and not the corporate jargon standard.
That's right. So
piece,
because we know each other, we can have a frank conversation. We can have an off-the-record conversation, and we can really get to, you know, the crux of the matter. So absolutely, network with people. Go to Vmworld. Go to NetApp and EMC.
I would really. I went to Vmworld first time last year, and kind of it just changed my perspective on anything. And I say this a lot, but why didn't I go 2 years ago? I've been saying that about a few things recently, but anyway.
Absolutely.
But it just for me, it just cemented. Well, this is what it's about. This is why we're in this sort of thing. Do you find then that you're doing like looking at how I look? Keep up to date with stuff. And I used to be really big on RSS feeds, but now I never use RSS at all. And there's a big thing with Google dropping all their feed stuff, RSS feed stuff, their feed reader stuff. And to me, it had no impact because I just stopped using RSS feeds for ages ago. Now, what about yourself? The reason I say it is the other day I was looking on my bookmarks and I RSS feeds in, and I'm like, I never look at them. I never look at those. What about yourself? Yeah, what kind of?
I don't use it either. So I find all the stuff I need comes through Twitter and through my network, basically in the community. So even Vmode, just go to a Vmode, as you know, and you get a lot of great info at Vmode. You also network with people, and it sparks discussion. And that's how we all learn, by discussing and sharing our experiences.
Yeah, it's a really good piece,
I think the days of keeping things close to your chest to keep your job, those days are over. And the only way you're going to keep your job is actually by sharing and getting better from that.
I think that's a perfect point to leave the vCatchup. And thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, Craig.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers, yeah.